So just starting off, welcome to Accessibility New York City Meetup. I'm Sean Laureate, and just wanted to give a quick thanks to Thoughtbot for generously donating the space, and Internet Society of New York for handling the streaming and recording and logistics and everything else connecting wires and stuff, and White Coat Captioning for the captioning. And I'm going to hand off for introductions.
Hi, everyone. My name is Abby. I just wanted to do a quick introduction of the fabulous speaker that we have today, who is Robert Bernstein, who wrote an amazing book called Uniquely Normal, Tapping the Reservoir of Normalcy to Treat Autism, which is actually, and I don't know if he would say this, but an award winner twice. Once for parenting, right? Yeah. It won an award for parenting, and also has a foreword, which I thought was really cool, by Dr. Temple Grandin, who says Uniquely Normal will provide readers with lots of practical ways to work with the full spectrum of individuals with autism. So without further ado, please welcome Rob. Yay.
Thanks, Abby.
Does she need this one? Or does that microphone?
I need to refer to the book, so.
Okay.
Well, it's a great introduction, and thank you, Abby. And I know we have a wide audience. I am not speaking to parents of autistic kids. I understand that. Like Abby said, this book won an award for parenting, and what that meant to me was if you have a child with a behavior issue, then you see my approach to behavior problems. And what it's not is a reward punishment kind of interaction with the kid. You don't react to the behavior, you try to find what's underneath it. So I'll talk about that when I introduce my approach a little bit. Let's see what I have here. This is somewhat, we'll skip that with the awards. So I'm looking to try to see something that's more universal in terms of what people need in getting by this world and being successful. So I thought of, boy, how do you change someone's behavior? All right, that's a general statement. And I have number one, respect, listen, and understand. And there's no number two. Somebody read this book and said, I know what this book is about. It's about you listening to people. I go, wait a second. It's a book on 27 case studies where I work successfully with these kids or adults, and you see exactly what's done in order to get these people to be more successful and listening. And I realized, yeah, in a way that person's right. Listening and respecting and really understanding the person from their point of view, that's what I'm about. That's what this book is about. I'm not here to talk about the book, but I can't separate myself from it too much. So I have here just a darn minute. Yesterday you said x plus 2 equals 5. Yesterday you said x equals 2. So the reason I like this slide is because of the teacher's reaction. The teacher's mad at the kid because he's saying, hey, yesterday said x equals 2 and it's x equals 3, and it's so obvious from the teacher's point of view. It's not obvious from the kid's point of view, but the teacher's taken almost offense. And parents, the kid doesn't listen to us and we're offended. Why aren't you listening to me? It's so obvious. Why don't you just do this? Why don't you just do that? And she's not connecting, listening, understanding this kid. And here's another, I don't know what that's called, a Millipede. Watch my step. What are you, a wise guy? So it's this kind of thing where people need to connect with other people. So that's kind of, what I'm emphasizing here. And my orientation. I mentioned this before about reward and punishment. Do you know Skinner? Do you know behaviorism? Do you know that at all? People are shaking their heads. B.F. Skinner, when he's a graduate student at Harvard, figured out this Skinner box. I mean, we don't want to go into behaviorism, but he's the father of behavior modification, and the Skinner box is where a rat would hit a lever and get a reward. You picture a graduate student giving, a pellet every time he hits the lever, which would do what? Increase the behavior. So a reward increases the behavior. And if you want to change somebody's behavior using behavior modification, you give a reward, and that increases the behavior. Pretty simple. You don't like the behavior, and a lot of behaviorists won't like this idea, but it's part of their system. You have to give an aversive stimulus or as punishment. It's part of the same thing. You don't like it, give a punishment. You like it, right? We all know this. So I'm in graduate school. I'm in college, and this cartoon was outside. I went to a behavior school. That's why I could criticize behaviorism, because I understand it. And here's one rat telling another one. Now, you could picture a graduate student, right? Person giving an award, a reward, a pellet every time he presses it. So what do you think the caption's going to be? All right. I'll do it this way. Have we got this guy trained? Every time we push down the lever, he gives us food. There's some truth in that, though, right? He got the graduate students trained. So, but if you think about it, our kids or our loved one or our parents, we're trained to fill in the gaps. We're trained to fill their needs. I've done this hundreds of times. I'm on a lined up in one of the Chinatown, 17 Mott Street or wherever, and I'm online and I see a kid behind me, and I go, I asked the kid something. I don't know. How old are you? I know some question. What happens? The parent answers. Why don't you let the kid in? I want to see what happens with the kid. And this happens all the time. We're always filling in for our kids. And so they're training us. So there's some truth in this little joke. So my approach is not behavioral. I made this slide to kind of explain who I am and where I'm coming from. And everything else after this will be from this perspective. And the whole book is from this perspective, uniquely normal. So the behavior, and the way I developed this was from a medical clinic where I speak on a regular basis in the city, Pediatrics 2000. And there's a physician there who loves my approach. And I have to say, okay, there's a medical model, and he's standing there, and he knows this. That's not what I'm doing. The medical model or the behavioral model, you have a behavior, you label it, anxiety disorder, whatever. And then you take medicine, or you change the behavior in a superficial way, and that's it. You give medicine, and then that changes the behavior. So it's really linear. It's great if you have diabetes, you take a pill, you have there's something to be said about that. What my approach is a cognitive approach, and it's behavior. I'm seeing how the person's mind works. I change that, and that in turn changes the behavior. What happens during this process, if you have a kid who has behavior issues, or autism, or other issues, that often gets better. So a lot of kids who come to me who are autistic actually wind up being not so autistic anymore, even though it's supposed to be a permanent disorder, or whatever. So that's where I am. I call it a cognitive approach, and I'm looking for underlying reasons for the behavior. These are questions I was going to ask you about workplace issues, friendships, standardized tests, about being happy. So if any of these issues kind of hit home, just let me know, because then I could talk for 5 minutes about friendships. What does a genuine friendship look like? I had one person, again, 30-year-old in the book, who lost 4 jobs. And so how do you get him to be successful on a job? Standardized tests. I helped one person, that same guy, actually take a nursing test. I forgot the name of it, but the standardized nursing test, he was the only person in the history of Columbia nursing school to fail the test twice. I was able to help him understand how not to be self-defeating, basically, self-destructive. We could talk about what I did and how I did, with him. Self-esteem issues, happiness. I use table tennis therapy. I actually own that term. It's an amazing game. Finally a reaction with table tennis. It's amazing. I might have here somewhere an article that was written about table tennis, and since I got a positive response. Table tennis is an amazing, amazing game for understanding the way somebody's mind works. So you don't have to be Asperger's, or there are plenty of egocentric people around, right? So I have this person serving me the ball, and I'm not quite ready, and he's serving me. I said, wait a second. Don't you see that I'm not ready? Now, if you have a person with that problem, right? If it was you would just wait. But if the problem is, hey, I'm in my own world, I don't care about you, I have the ball, I'm serving it, then he's going to do it even if I'm not ready. Here's the beauty of table tennis. The beauty of table tennis is that I could give him another chance. I could make believe I'm fixing my pants or tying my shoe. I could give him 20 chances for him to do what? Oh, hey, stop himself, do whatever he needs to do with his mind, and then wait for me and serve the ball. And that's when the therapy starts. Because then I could ask him, hey, what did you do? Oh, I stopped myself. Wow. Could you stop yourself when you're in a lecture and you have to listen to your teacher? Or listen to look at a performance? Can you stop that and kind of do what you need to do and for somebody else up there, or a friend who so you're not so egocentric? So here's a good example. I'm leaving my editor's house, and it's snowy, and I slip on her steps going down, her place. And what does she say? Be careful. I turn around. I go, you're laughing. I turn around. You know what I'm going to say? I say, oh, thanks a lot, Judy. Yeah, you're supposed to tell me that before I slip, right? And this is sort of why punishment doesn't work, because you punish to be. So looking at a behaviorism, because we talked about that. Okay, so let's say your system works, okay, that I should be careful. What does that really mean? That means the next time I see her next week, before I leave, I have to think about what happened the week before, that I should be careful, and right? I mean, it's almost impossible, especially if you have issues. If you have problems, that's impossible. So it doesn't make any sense to punish somebody for a behavior in a way, because you really want them to change their behavior before they do it, right? And now you're sitting there saying, what do you mean? That's impossible. No. Table tennis could do that in that example. They could change their behavior because I'm giving them 20 times, right, in that example. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And that's a good example of a cognitive approach as opposed to behavior approach, right? That I'm trying to change the way somebody thinks. So in this accessibility group, some people could, I have trouble doing something. All right, let's see. I'm going to see how their mind works, see what's stopping them from doing something successfully. Maybe they're impulsive, maybe they're not reflective, maybe whatever, and I can help resolve that. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. George the genius. This guy, again, he was one of my hardest, one of the most difficult cases. I even wrote that down. 62 years old. He was a genius. He designed, developed, made, and produced eye equipment. He competed with, what is it, Zeiss, or one of these big companies. There's no question he was a genius, like 180 IQ or whatever. Now, when I work with somebody, and you can understand this, I need to see the struggle in how they think. You know, I need to give them something that they can't do. If they could do everything I'm giving them, I have to give something that they can't do to see how their mind works. Well, I have a closet full of chemistry experiments. I have experiments that have to do with, well, it's legal. I have a license for this. Sodium in water, you get an explosion. If that doesn't interest somebody, I don't know what. You know what I mean? You know, and then we figure out, so I couldn't do chemistry experiments or chess. I own the term chess therapy, so I use that therapeutically. Table tennis therapy, I don't think I own that. Nobody better take it. But yeah, I use that. I couldn't do chemistry. He understood it, light years. So I had to think of something that he couldn't understand. So what did I do? I went to my friend, Will Shorts. Do you know Will, the crossword editor of the time? Yeah. See, it's more than Temple Grandin that I know. I see Will a couple of times a week, and this is my, and I'm going to blow this up, 39 across. I don't know if you could see it. 39 across. It says lead story in tomorrow's newspaper. Okay. Not only, as an aside, the people who know Will, this was my favorite clue, and I found out like a couple of weeks ago, this was his favorite clue in his favorite crossword book. So this is his favorite book. It's out of print. I had to go online and find a way, and I have like 5 of these things for people who like Will. I have them sign this. But it's in here. Okay, lead story in tomorrow's newspaper. And what does that mean? That means on 39 across, it's blank, elected. So the next day, the very next day, was the election of Bill Clinton and Bob Dole. Lead story in tomorrow's newspaper. So you could see how that's going to be a big problem, right? Lead story, and just to skip, let me see. Good, perfect. At the top of the puzzle, I don't know if I know it doesn't matter if you read it or not, but just to remind me that ABC, there were so many calls to the Times. How could you know? Well, what's going to be the answer? Oh, let me go back, if I can here. Okay, so here, let me tell you this. Okay, 39 and 43, right? We got that. 43 is the word elected. I should have told you that, right? 43, E-L-E-C-T-E-D. That's elected. We got that, right? Now it's 7 letters for 39 across. Presidential race, Bill Clinton, Bob Dole. What's 39 across? What do you think? What? Clinton, right? C-L-I-N-T-O-N. Perfect. Clinton.
Bob Dole is 7 letters.
Bob Dole is. You see, this is too smart of a group, right? So people looked at that, said, Clinton, how could you? They were irate. They got caught. It was on ABC News the next day. How could you possibly put Clinton? How dare you predict the next, right? And Bill and Will said exactly what Jolly said. Bob Dole is 7 letters. Now you're doing the crossword puzzle. How could they both be right? The way they both be right is that, take a look at this, 39 down, right? Let's take a look at 39 down, right? 40 down, right? It all has to fit. and watch. I mean, you're gonna. Okay, let's go on. Okay, that's that. 39 down, and I have a blow up of it. Black Halloween animal. So B for Bob, bat. Clinton would be cat.
No way.
I know. It's total genius. 40 down, French word. Bob, B-O, is we. Clinton, L, is Louis, which is, what does it mean? Him or to him, or his, yeah. So that's how it all worked. Just kind of genius. Now, the reason I'm showing you this is because, as you probably know, George couldn't figure it out. He was so, he said just what you said. Oh, it's Clinton. I go, how could it be Clinton? Will would lose his job. He can't have that. And I saw, now, could he figure it out? He's a genius, right? Could he figure, yes, of course he could figure this out, right? But he didn't want to. He was just, so tell me what, I said, I'm going to tell, that's the point of it, is not telling you. I want to see you struggle. No, it has to be Clint. How could it be Clint? He said it over and over again. And then I realized, at least this gave me the main hint of what's going on in his mind. If he deemed, and here, I should say this. The problem that he came in with me, that his wife really wanted him to see me because he just retired. She wanted help. And he would go to the store for groceries. She'd give him 3 things to get, and he didn't get it. He's this genius, couldn't get the 3 things on, that his wife wanted, right? So, all right, how am I going to figure this out? Why isn't he not bringing these things home? And if I asked you that in the beginning, you would probably say, I don't know. That's my job. I have to figure out what's going on in his mind. So what this told me is that the presumption is that he can do it if he allows himself to think in a certain way. He's smart enough to figure this out. Because he was so impatient, my reaction to this was, he just doesn't think it's important. He could figure out these complex ocular theories, but he can't figure this out. And I've seen this with a lot of geniuses. They are just locked in to what they feel is their thing. And when you ask them some simple thing or relating, you'd be surprised who is supposed to have Asperger's. Like Bill Gates is supposed to have Asperger's. I don't know for sure. But, it's like but they have difficulty in the simplest kinds of things. With him, in this case, it wasn't, something physiological. He just didn't deem it important in his mind. When he doesn't, he lets that go. If it's not important, it's out of his mind. And so when I told him this, he says, yeah, okay, that's it. That is it. I said, okay, fine. You got to change that when you're going shopping for your wife. Other than that, I don't care. You can do whatever you want. You can be yourself. That's the whole thing with this kind of therapy, if you want to call it that I do. I call it therapy. That he's in control of being successful. So he can be himself and, ignore the rest of the world and do whatever he wants. But when it comes to something important, for him, it's listening to his wife. For somebody else, is listening to a college class. For somebody else, is listening to the teacher. For someone else, is having a relationship where you have to actually listen to the person you're dating or being with, right? It's really in control of what you need to do for yourself. And that's why this approach works, I think, why I had some success. This is an interesting case that there are different stories about this guy, but I came across this last night, and I said, this might be fun to read. He I asked him about where he eats lunch every day, and this is high school, and he said he eats lunch in the computer room. And I said, oh, like every day? He says, no, yeah, every day for 4 years. He had lunch in the computer room because he couldn't speak to anybody who he doesn't already know. He can't approach any stranger. And that's just him. And I'm not going to get into details because, unless you want me to, because of his problem. So, so Richard came for a session after his first day of work. It was really hard, he said. And a lady got mad at me. Why? She said I made her the wrong thing. Now, this is in a bagel shop. What'd you make her? Mustard and butter on a sesame bagel. He made a mustard and butter sandwich. I said, mustard and butter? Who eats mustard and butter? Richard said, I said, no one eats a mustard and butter sandwich. But they do, he says. They order weird stuff. And I never found out how that happened, but I did tell Richard that he should always repeat orders back to customers to make sure he knew what he wanted. That's like telling a first grader to do graduate school work. It's almost impossible that he's going to do that. So I asked the owner, all right? So I had to find, here's the key. When you're changing someone's behavior, they're not going to listen to me. They're not going to listen to a friend. They're not going to listen to a parent. Although I had to listen to my own kid. He sat me down and said, Dad, you got to, so that happens to me too. But the situation is going to dictate change. He's working at this store. He's getting paid. At a certain point, I have the owner come in and say to him, it's part of your job, with my instruction, so the kid doesn't flip out. It's part of your job to say something to that person after you give them the bagel or the coffee. You have to say something. Have a nice day. Come back. Whatever. He has to say something. So I had the owner say, that's part of your job. So that was something he, should listen to. So let me see what he says here. Is the sound working? It's playing.
Do you want to check that he's set headphones on his volume? Just see that he's
Yeah, we could. You could stop it for a minute. Thanks. Meanwhile, I'll keep talking. What I wasn't going to say about this kid was that after the coffee shop,
could be switched to HDMI
where
change videos.
yeah, play that. Yeah, you could play this. Yeah, because this is
What's
more
that?
important. Yeah, play it. Yeah,
Make
it's on.
make it headphone out. In here? Yeah. Yeah, the upwards headphone.
Is it red? Just, that's okay.
I'm going to give it a shot. Yeah.
You got to say something. It doesn't even matter what. It doesn't really matter what. You just need to say something to keep the conversation going. That's why she left.
Well, I think she had to go somewhere.
I know, but the conversation would have lasted. Oh, sorry. Lasted longer. Stop it. If you started something. So you never saw this girl before? How old was you? So the point is that he said, I heard it 100 times. He said, oh, she had to leave. Well, yeah, but if he kept talking, she wouldn't leave. But that's part of his issue. Okay, now I should continue with what I'm saying because it's a great story. Okay, I'm sorry, I gotta. So, 30? Yeah, just press it again, and it'll keep going. Is it red? Is it okay? Was sitting there in the shop after his time behind the counter. And as we're sitting down, I'm saying hello to this elderly woman, and, we had a, 20-second conversation. And we sat down, I sat down with him, and he said, she thinks you're weird, because I did something that he would never do, start talking to somebody. She thinks you're weird. I said, okay, this is great, because he's been told 3,000 times, maybe more, by all his family, that someone's not going to think you're weird if you say something to him. It's okay to ask somebody for homework. It's okay to write or whatever. So this situation is a real situation. I said, when this woman, Lily, leaves, she's either going to leave in front of us or the other way. I said, if she leaves in front of us, I'm going to take a chance of embarrassing him, and I'm going to approach her. So she leaves, and I said, Lily, was it okay that I said hello to you? She said, of course, I'm by myself. It was terrific. And then I said, he thinks that you would think it was weird. And then she looked at him. Now, her height was like this. So he's tall. So their eyes are about even. She's standing and he's sitting, and they're about even. And she looks at him, and he says, no, it was so nice having this little conversation. It was normal. She used the word normal. I couldn't design it better. No, because he thinks he's weird. He does. If you ask him, he'll tell you he's weird. His friends think he's weird. So weird is, how he describes himself. She's saying, it was normal, it was lovely, it was wonderful. She goes on and on and on. And she leaves. And now it's my job to say as little as possible, because the impact was there. So I said, what do you think? And he says, well, I guess it's okay to say hello to people. This is after 4 years. I saw this kid for altogether like 6 weeks, because he was going off to college. But at that certain point, he was ready to accept the truth. And then literally the next week he's off to college, and he called me, and I said, okay, this is the test. Who do you eat lunch with? Do you eat lunch with any people? Now that's the litmus test. And he said, as if nothing has happened in the past. He says, oh, I have 2 sets of friends. One set of friends, like to party, and another set of friends like me who are very shy. So I switch off eating with different people and now I just heard like a few weeks ago, he's married, he's working in the city, and he loves his job, and he's like, So, so that's, that's all in the book. But it gives you a sense of my approach and how I work. So, they're good stories. Are you going to like this? You're going to like this, Alex. On the scale of emotional development, what is number 1? Do you know that? Erickson scale, the scale of emotional development? You never had that in college, psychology? Physical development is easy, right? You start crawling at 6 months, right? And there's a whole scale, right? So people say, well, there has to be a scale of emotional development, with the last, towards the end is independent, and right, being independent, right? The very first thing, and you can look this up, unless they've changed it, is trust. So we're talking about a 2-year-old, or that feeling of, there has to be that kind of trust in order to have normal development emotionally. There has to be a sense of trusting somebody, right? Your parents. Let me see. Should I read it first? Do you want to? Yeah, let me play this first, and then I'll read it. I want to have the impact of this first. So let me see if I could find it here. No. Hang on. All right. I'm going to bring you into one of my sessions, which I think is kind of cool. So now you're going to know a little bit about me. This is the dialogue. I take my session, so this is really what happened. Alex, I'm going to order a pizza. What kind do you want? Plain. I'm going to have mushroom. That's what I'm saying to him. He says plain. I said, I'm going to have mushrooms. How many slices do you want? One. Okay, I said. I'm going to order a mushroom pie with a couple of plain slices. Simple. Mushroom is good. I could eat mushroom. All right. Well, which do you like better, mushroom or plain? Actually, my favorite is pepperoni. And I go, whoa, okay, all right. Now you know me a little bit. I want to know what's going on in here, right? Again, it's not like a check if you got it right or not, which is what, most of education is. I said, wait a second. Actually, I like it pepperoni. Pepperoni's your favorite? I asked him. Why didn't you say so? I don't have to have pepperoni all the time. Okay, that doesn't really say much. So now I'm testing him, right? He said he'll go for mushrooms. So I said, I'll order all mushrooms. Okay? His favorite is pepperoni. He's going along with the mushrooms. And I say nothing. And then I said, Alex, if I asked you again, what would you order now? Quiet. I guess I would have pepperoni. All right, we're back on track. So why did you say plain? I work with kids who don't talk at all. It's great working with people who can talk because you get this. So why do you say plain? Do you know the answer to that? No, you're going to find out. Let's see what he says. Why did you say plain and then mushrooms? Because plain popped into my mind first, then mushrooms. Okay, so now we're getting some insight into how his mind works. Okay, but you just told me you prefer pepperoni. Why didn't you speak up when I said I was ordering mushrooms? When I say something, I stick with it no matter what. All right, so now we're on and I go off. You're going, whoa, and I'm going, whoa, too. So I say, that must cause you a lot of problems. His eyes lit up. It does. I often buy things I don't want because when I get an impulse to do something, I have to stick with it. We're getting some insight into himself. Now, this is a great, I'm glad I included this because this is what, if some teacher or some parent says this, I would yell at them. So now I'm yelling at myself because listen to what I say to him. I say what everyone does, and I did it too. I said to him, why don't you just, boy, you're going to feel differently from now on. Because people say, why don't you just, click on these few things and go on this and upload it to your website. And I'm going, I have problems with this, man. You know what I mean? So I'm doing the same thing with him. Why don't you just think before giving an answer or making a decision? He just told me he doesn't think. He's impulsive, but here I go. Why don't you just think before giving an answer or making a decision? Just now, you could have thought about what kind of pizza you liked, come up with an answer that felt right. Okay, thought for a minute. When I think about something, other thoughts come into my mind. Like a tidal wave. I can't think straight. Do you lose track of the original question? Because I think that's kind of what happens. Exactly. So I just go with whatever pops into my mind and stick with it. So I tell them, if I can get you to think in a way that enables you to actually make a decision you're happy with, would that be good? Yeah, that would be good. So it goes on, but it gives you a sense of what I do and Alex. So now I need your help. How much time we want time for questions and this and that, and I have slides about being happy. You might appreciate this, actually. Here's a kid who's not going to be happy no matter what he does. He has figured out, you know how you figure out things about yourself? He's figured out that he's never going to be happy. So you might like this. It's I know. Oh. I asked him if he could get past not enjoying himself, right? You have to, no sound, but we'll get the sound in a minute. So that's important because the question isn't on the tape. So I asked him if he could get past not enjoying himself. So, Jolly, could we get this?
Yep.
I could tell you a story about this kid while we're waiting.
No, we're waiting for you to hit go.
Hit go again?
Not enjoying myself.
Okay, you got it. Okay. Let me see. How do we? Okay, I could go back here, and start again. And I think I spelt the word past wrong. Would you say that's a true statement? Could you guess past not enjoying? Oh, I can't stop it.
Well, I'm not sure if I got past not enjoying myself, I think that there will only be more not enjoying myself.
Very well put. That's why I like you so much. You're great. You are great.
Thanks.
Really. Wow. Only a person who really knows himself could say that statement. Okay, I'm going to continue with this.
I got 100, like this week, I got 100 on the ELA test. I was one of only 2 people that got that 100 on that ELA test.
That's almost impossible.
But I still didn't feel that great. It didn't make my day. It should have made my day. But I still didn't feel that great. It didn't make my day. It should have made my day.
It should have made my day, but instead of feeling great about this 100, you wind up with a lot of negative thoughts of some sort.
Yeah, I mean, I always find the negatives of something. If it's not related to the subject, then I can just bring the unrelated negative in, and it could destroy that happy feeling.
So if we could practice somehow. Okay. So he's an expert in not enjoying himself. Now, let me see what the next thing. Now, I'm going to need your help with this. I don't know if this is the same session or a different session. I found a way of getting to his mind and getting him to turn this negative into a positive. So I could play that, or we could go on to other things.
Play it.
All right. It's therapists and teachers, I think, would find this especially interesting. And by the way, the premise is, okay, that's. Let's say you got 100 on a test. Oh wait, I didn't keep it. Okay. Okay, I have it on another. I thought that would be too much. But all right, we'll save that for another time. And this is the mother saying that he's happy. What's this? This is an interesting tape of how, again, there's like a low self-esteem. But she'll be home Thanksgiving, say.
Yeah, that's true. I'm just not social enough to feel like I can hang out with her.
Right.
I get that's just my own struggles again now. I feel like I did kind of connect with her, but I didn't know how to follow through with it. In the first 20 minutes of the car ride, she's like, "Oh, I throw house parties sometimes." And I was like, "Would you be able to come?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure." But then I'd love to. But then after 4 hours of being in the car with her, she probably got bored of me or something, and then that party never came up again.
So it's sort of that same mentality. He's going to find a way of putting himself down. And what I did with him, do you remember Occupy Wall Street? You got to remember, he is his problem, one of his problems, was that he never asked anybody a question. And you're standing saying, no, that's what do you mean? That's impossible. So I was with Will in Valhalla. No, yeah, in, well, what's that school in Poughkeepsie? Vassar, playing table tennis, because he's a table tennis guy. And this woman came over to me and said, hey, are you Rob Bernstein? I said, well, how do you, your card is on my mother's kitchen table, and you're seeing my brother. I go, this is perfect. So I stopped playing table tennis. I brought it to the side. I said, look, your mother said something about your brother having trouble asking questions. She says, he never asks any questions. And I realized it was really true. He doesn't ask questions. So I brought him to Occupy Wall Street. Have you been there? Anyone be there? Were you there? It's pretty cool, right? And you have this guy from Minnesota with long hair, and he's, you could see he's really into it. I said, I heard this was really disorganized, and how do you get your food? He's going to be here for a week. He says, no, look over there, and there's a pile of food piled up, of packages of food. I go, all right. Go to a family of 4, 2 kids. They're from Delaware. I said, well, what do you do? Oh, we think it's a better civics lesson than staying home. So I took them out of school. Everyone had a remarkable story. Of course, I asked my friend here to ask, ask him. No. But he saw me ask these people who got remarkable stories. We came back. I had this on tape, and I showed his mother. His mother almost started to cry. He said to me, I guess it's okay to ask questions, because I see that nobody made fun of you. No one thought you were stupid. Everyone asked, and he said, what was the word he used? You asked mundane questions. That's what he said. And you got these responses. And from then on, his problem with that problem was 100%. It wasn't 90, it was 100% resolved. That now he's able to ask, you talk to his mother in high school, he would never ask anybody for any homework or this or anything. So of course I understood how his mind worked. I figured, I did my thing, and he was ready for something like this. And in that one, hey, you all know, the way we learn is not incrementally. We learn by realization, right? You realize things. You go, okay. You get that moment. That's really how we really learn about things. And that's what happened with him. He just got it. Like, wow, no more problem. So that's kind of an interesting, and then he had confidence and so forth. Let me see. Let me just, that's sort of interesting. Well, let's see. We're supposed to end in what? How much time do I have, really? Yeah, we should. I think we should. Here's an article with table tennis. I'll send it to you if you want it. Yeah, it didn't get, obsessive guy. Let's see if there's anything. Yeah, why don't we open it up for questions? So that's pretty much, and I'm so happy that when I came to this group, it's so, in my mind, it's so diverse, because people would have all kinds of needs, like Sean was saying. I said, what are you guys interested in? He said, well, it depends on the people. Yeah, okay. Well, it's not defined as, accessibility can mean almost anything. So when you said, look, just talk about your passion, I hope it translated. But go ahead, ask me anything about anything.
So I can start off. So thank you so much for coming. This has been super fascinating. So it sounds like for the examples that you've given, there have been some kind of realizations that people have had through you walking them cognitively through something. So asking questions and kind of holding their hands through analyzing the behaviors that they went through and trying to kind of get from them where their minds were at that point. Whereas for another technique seems like you're kind of leading by example. So like showing somebody by going up and asking somebody questions or going over and saying hello to people,
Right.
that you can demonstrate that, no, this can be okay. What other kinds of techniques do you tend to use, or what kinds of things do you find help people come to these realizations that they've had maybe a lot of trouble arriving at?
I'll give you an example. But I try to do a lot. I have an office in Westchester, in Dobbs Ferry, but more than half the time I'm out because I want to bring these kids, like Occupy, I want to bring these people into real situations. So so I'm bringing this person into a restaurant. I know the owner, so that's nice in case, he has a difficulty or a tantrum or something. And the owner comes up, sees this kid has some kind of boot on his foot. She says, I had that same issue with my foot, and I didn't really know what position to sleep in. And could you tell me how you do it? How do you, what position works for you when you sleep? Now you can understand this. He says, absolutely nothing. He doesn't answer it. She walks away. And I said, she thinks that you're not friendly, right? And he said, why? I didn't do anything. I didn't say anything. It's interesting. He didn't say anything. And how could she think I'm not friendly? I didn't even say anything. And it's just, again, it's this egocentric kind of thing. So we spend the next 10 minutes explaining, the owner, Stacy, really doesn't think, do you want her to think that you're not friendly? No. And again, a behaviorist can tell you what Stacy's thinking because they're looking at behavior. I know she thinks that you're not friendly because she just walked away. I know that. And he doesn't like that she thinks that he's unfriendly. So then I get her to come over 10 minutes later. Again, if you don't get a chance for him to if he doesn't get a second chance and a third chance, then there's no therapy. Why should he get better? And this time he realized that. But the point is, and with what Sean's question, this is probably the first time that before this, he was basically locked into his own thought patterns. He didn't realize, and this is where the cognitive approach comes in, he literally didn't realize that other people have an impression of him. That's huge. We all have that. I better wear this or that, and No, he literally did not have that concept that other people are going to have an impression on him. Imagine going through life like that. You can't function. So how do you resolve it? This made a difference. So yes, I said I go by example, but I try to capture that moment that's going to make a difference to that kid. And I could just give you example after, of doing that sort of thing. Yeah.
I was curious, I know in one of your earlier slides with the example of the young man who was convinced that he couldn't achieve happiness, we didn't get to hear the second part of that. Would you mind telling us how that resolved?
Wow, okay. There are different issues with that, but he was a perfectionist. He got as you can tell, he got 100 on that test, right? So he got a 98 on a test. He was so upset that he didn't get 100. He ripped up the paper, and he didn't go to school for 2 days. So this is really, his perfectionist attitude was really, really serious. And so I said to him, would you have been happy with a 67? He said, yes, because then I would accept that I didn't know the stuff. With a 98, I should have known the stuff. I'd be like, you can't win, He finds a way of being. So I said, okay. So this kid was, 2 stories with him. He was ready to go to a mental hospital. It was a Saturday afternoon around 2 o'clock, I remember. His mother calls me, I'm taking this kid to a mental hospital. I walk into the room. He tells me I'm going to a mental hospital, right then and there. And what happened? His mother said that she hates him, he kicks her, and that, you know, the issue is nobody knows she didn't know what to do with the kid. So he's going. So what do you do at that moment with this kid who hates, you know, he hates his mother said he hates him, kicks him, and they're going. So what do I say to this kid? I say, well, whose fault is this? Well, it's my mother's. She said, right? Clearly. Well, okay. So I said, and his mother's in the kind of kitchen listening to this. I know that, but it doesn't matter to me. I said, but you're the one going to the mental hospital. She's going now. And your mother should be the one going, right? If it's her fault, but you're the one who's going to go. You know what's going to happen? Because I have a lot of people like this. You're going to go. They'll give you some drug to calm you down. In a day or two, you're going to come back home. And your mother's going to be here. Nothing's going to be changed. Your mother's not going to change. And when I said your mother should be the one going and not you, he kind of, you know, calmed down. He agreed with me. The mother later was really, really angry at me, right? So he says, okay, yeah, you're right. It's stupid for him to go to a mental, you know, he realized it doesn't make any sense. I said, okay. And now I always, as you know, with the table tennis, I always go a step further. I go, all right, that doesn't really, okay, now that you get that, that's not going to resolve what's going on. I said, well, you're going to have to apologize to your mother. Because what do you mean? You just said it's my mother's fault. She should be going. I said, I know, but somebody has to be the grown-up one around here. Really. And that was the whole thing. I said, look, you're going to have to make peace. And to make peace, you're going to have to apologize to her. And he wound up, because you're going to be going. Just because you understand it, you're still going because she's still angry. So he apologized to her, and you know, problem for the moment solved. So what do I do with this kid who was going to almost just dissociated himself from school? He was into videotapes, gaming, and you guys know this better than I do, and I don't know anything about this, but creating games. You know, Real Engine, you ever hear that? Of course. Okay, I never heard of it. Okay, so this was his thing, and I said, you know, I'm going to bring someone in. He had this guy Dan from camp. Called him up, Dan, I'll pay you, come, help this guy with gaming, right? So they're in my office. You know what? I really try to learn from other people, you know, and I try to say, wow, hey, this is cool. It didn't. I was totally lost. But they were doing, you know, and manipulating whatever and doing all this. And I said, you know, I saw what they were doing, and it was incredibly sophisticated. I said, man, they could maybe use you at NASA. I mean, this is like, wow, you know? And it gave him a sense of self. Instead of dropping out of school, which is what he wanted to do, he alienated himself from his parents. He was living in his little cave downstairs, you know, away from everybody, only came up for food. I mean, he was just totally, right? And now this gave him some life. I said, wow, you know, he wound up going to, and he's probably still in Rochester Institute of Technology, majoring in, I don't know what, but it's some kind of gaming. You know, now he's in college. He's being successful. So that's the backstory on that kid who decided that he's never going to be happy again. Yeah.
Yeah, my question was more like a closer question. Is that cool?
Closer or cold?
Unless anybody else had another question.
No, go ahead.
I was wondering where we could buy Uniquely Normal, your book.
Oh, Amazon. Amazon.com should have it. Thank you, yeah.
Okay.
And I have a couple of copies here.
Cool.
But yes, thank you, Amazon. Yeah. Yeah, I like the title.
I do too. I think it's beautiful.
Uniquely Normal, okay. Tapping, now it should be into, but my publisher didn't, it was too many words. Tapping the reservoir of normalcy to treat autism, tapping the reservoir of normalcy. So that's kind of how I really feel, that there's something there that we need to surface. So if we go through each one of these, it's there, but it just needs to surface. And that's what I'm trying to do. For example, you have a kid or a person who's a little behaving, and suddenly the behavior is absolutely perfect. And the speech is perfect, and they're explaining things right. Everything is great. And you're saying, man, I wish he could be like this all the time. This is like an accident. And I'm saying, wait, I want that to be the norm. I want to find a way of, hey, that thing that behavior that you saw as wonderful, I want that to be the way he is all the time.
All right. Well, Rob, thank you so much. That was awesome.
Thank you, Sean.
And thank you, everybody. Thank you, Thoughtbot, for the space again. Thank you, Internet Society and Jolly, for streaming and recording, and White Coat captioning. Thanks. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.